Now, again, everybody studies very differently, but at Privacy Professional Training, we want everybody to be able to pass their exams, and we only want you guys to have to take it one time. Hello, welcome back to Privacy Professional Training. It's Fumi speaking. So in today's video, I'm going to be creating a mock schedule. So I talked about in a lot of my videos how to pass a number of different certifications. I wanted to show you guys today what I do when I am about to create a timetable that's going to accommodate for all of the other priorities that I have when it comes to being a privacy professional. So I know that many people that take the privacy exams are not students. They are working individuals that are trying to get certifications outside of their day-to-day lives. Maybe they have family priorities, work priorities, etc. So I thought it would be useful today to show you guys a mock schedule for the CIPP US exam. So I personally took the CIPP US exam in 2019, and I created a schedule based on what we're going to walk through today. And I just wanted to show you what a sample might look like to assist you while you study for your examinations. If you're looking for any resources to assist you in taking the CIPP US exam, I've actually created a course that you can access on Udemy if it's something that is beneficial for you in studying for your test. I've also created some unofficial question papers to help you study, in addition to any other resources that you may be looking for. So without further ado, let's get into this mock schedule that I would create and how I go on to create my own schedules when I'm taking privacy certifications. So the first thing I wanted to do is I'm just going to make the title. So I would just type in here schedule, and then I would put CIPP US. Then after I put this in, I would add how many days I want to take. So I talked to you guys before about how I usually generally will take about 3 months to study for my certifications. So I'm just going to put time frame, 3 months. And then I generally like to, I've talked about this before, I usually will purchase the IAPP official textbook. Before I purchase the book, I'm going to open a new tab. I'm going to go to IAPP, and then I'm going to take a look at the resources here. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to certify. I'm going to click on CIPP certifications. And then I'm going to take a look to see the CIPP US, which is here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I've already set the time frame. I'm going to take a look at the CIPP US certification. And then we can see here the length of the exam is 2.5 hours. The number of scored questions is 75. And the number of unscored questions is 15. So I'm going to actually copy this, and this is going to go into my schedule. And the reason I'm going to copy this and put it into my schedule is to remind me what it is that I'm working towards. So we've put the length of the exam, the number of scored questions. So we know that there's 90 questions and we've got 2.5 hours. So we have a little bit over a minute per question. And the reason this is really useful for your schedule is because when you're trying to figure out how long it should take you, when you start doing the test questions, you'll know how long it should take you based on what the length of the exam is and how many questions you have to answer in this period. And the reason I add this to my schedule is because I'm going to be referencing this document regularly because it's going to give me insight into how I should schedule based on my time frame, which here is 3 months, okay? Okay, so I'm going to go back to the IAPP website. I'm going to take a look at the body of knowledge, okay? Because this is going to outline the concepts and topics I need to study. So we're just going to scroll down, get started, and then we're going to look at the body of knowledge. And both of these resources are free. You can access them directly. This is without you even purchasing the textbook. So you can see the effective date for this particular body of knowledge is 1st of September 2025. When you're creating your schedule, make sure that you have the correct body of knowledge because they do change these exams regularly. So If you're brand new, it might be useful for you to read this section here about the types of questions that you might encounter and how it's going to be worded during the exam. I usually scroll down and I start looking at the domains. We can see here domain 1 is about the US privacy environment. The first thing that I do is I look at the minimum and maximum amount of questions that I might get. So I create a folder on my laptop and I will start putting together all the resources that I need. But I want to look at which of the domains has the most questions. So we can see domain 1 has a maximum of 33. Domain 2 has 19, right? And then domain 3 has maximum of 5. Okay. Domain 4 has 6 questions. And then domain 5 has 21. So we know that 2 of them are very large. The ones that we need to spend most of our time, state privacy laws, and then number 1, which is the US privacy environment. So when I create the schedule, I already know that a lot of my time, over half of the exam questions are in 2 domains. So I'm going to spend most of my time reading for these domains. And that's information that I would put down inside of the schedule. 2 of the domains, because it's a numbers game. Well, that's how I like to take the test. I like to know what's my biggest chance of winning, right? Number of scored questions is 75. And out of those 75, at a maximum, 50 of those questions is going to come from 2 domains. So I know that I really need to put most of my energies towards those 2 domains. So 2 domains have up to 54 questions. So you're basically just at the planning phase, because when you plan well, you're more likely to succeed. I told you guys that every exam that I've ever taken, I passed the first time I took it. And this is my thought process before I take any type of certification. So I wanted to walk you guys through it today. So 2 of the domains have up to 54 questions. Look how many of those you could get from the scored. So if you're strategic and you study very, very hard in 2 of the domains, you're more likely to get a lot of the questions needed to pass the test. Let's go back to the body of knowledge. So we start looking at the competencies. Identify the branches of government and know their roles and functions. You should read through all of this before you invest in buying any sort of textbook, particularly where you know domain 1 carries the most amount of the questions that you need to score correctly. So let's keep scrolling down. When you get this body of knowledge, read through everything that is required. You can see here that potentially up to 22 of the questions are going to come from understanding the principles of information management from a US perspective. So you need to know this section very, very well. Okay. And then we can see the federal privacy laws carries 19. So between number 1, domain 1, 33 at a max, domain 2, 19, and then domain 5, we've got another 22. Just 21. Just between 3 domains, we've covered most of the questions. So those are the 3 that you're going to focus on a lot, and you're going to put a lot of your emphasis into. And when you do the practice questions, then you are going to make sure that you really understand these 3 domains very, very well. Let's go back to the IAPP website. Okay. So we also have here a glossary of privacy terms. I always find this very useful, particularly the fact that the exam changes often, so the glossary is going to continue to evolve. It's really useful for you to understand some key privacy terms. I'm actually planning to do an entire video talking about foundational terms that you're going to see consistently among all of the examinations, because there are certain terms in data protection like notice and transparency that are going to be seen throughout every single test that you encounter in some varying degree. So let's take a look at glossary. This is also free. And one thing I like to do when I look at the glossary is you can filter it based on the exam you're taking. We're doing a schedule here for the CIPPUS. So I would click on that first. And now we're on it. We can expand all of them. And this is also very useful as a resource for you to be able to understand basic terminology. So as you're referencing the official IAPP book, you can go from the book. Let's say you're reading a specific section of the book, and you don't understand a term, you can reference between the glossary that's provided here and also the textbook to keep yourself fresh on what the terms mean, because you're going to encounter a lot of these terms throughout. And one thing that I like that's consistent amongst all of the certifications is we can see here for the CIPPUS, they talk about accountability. If you go to the CIPM exam, you're going to see accountability again. And I actually am going to go over some key terms that you're going to need to know based on all of the privacy certifications that I've taken and some of the ones that you guys are planning to take as well. But let's go back to the CIPPUS. So we've got the glossary of privacy terms. You should definitely reference this throughout your studies. But now you have insight into two of the main exams, and you've given yourself 3 months to study, right? So then the next thing you need to ask yourself is, how many hours a day can I do? This might be that you set yourself 2 hours a day. So if we go back to the IAPP website, I'm going to go to the overview. IAPP has a recommendation on how many hours you should spend at a minimum taking some of these tests. So we're going to go to the CIPP section, and at a minimum, it talks about spending, I think it's between 30 to 60 hours. I'm just trying to check what they've put here. So I'm going to go to Certification Candidate Handbook before testing. So there's actually a recommendation from IAPP on how long you should spend in terms of exam preparation. We're just going to go down to that. Okay, this is what I was looking for. How to prepare. Preparation makes all the difference. In general, we recommend that you train and study for a minimum of 30 hours. We want you to succeed. Okay. So if you're giving yourself 3 months and you're going to spend the minimum amount of time, 30 hours, then you probably only need to do 1 hour every 3 or 4 days. Generally, I will spend between 90 to 120 hours studying for any one exam. And again, I've passed every single certification the first time I took it. So I generally will spend 4 times the amount of time that IAPP recommends. That's up to you. But when you're creating the schedule, you said, how many hours a day can I dedicate? And the reason this is really important to know is this is going to influence the materials that you use. If you have more time to study, then you'll have more materials. If you have less time to study, then you're going to be very, very specific about the materials that you spend time reading. How many hours a day can I dedicate? It may be that you want to study at the weekend. You might say, how many weekends do I have? So the reason I do it this way when I create my own schedule is because I am a privacy professional and I work during the day. So I talked about in other videos how I would wake up at 5 in the morning to study for my tests. That's the time that used to work for me very well. And then in the mornings on the weekends. So I think it's very important to plan, which is why we're going through this video today. Because when you plan, even if you don't follow the plan to the T, like every single day you don't follow it through, at least you have a general idea and you're doing a little bit every single day. And to me, that's more important than trying to cram the day of. Now, again, everybody studies very differently, but at Privacy Professional Training, we want everybody to be able to pass their exams, and we only want you guys to have to take it one time. So if you create a plan as opposed to being like, oh, I'll spend one weekend and then take the test, you put yourself in a position to have to do a lot of guesswork, as opposed to building on the knowledge that you have and using a wealth of resources to make sure that you're able to pass this thing one time. So let's just say for today's video purpose, we're going to say we have 2 hours a day and 2 hours per weekday, because we need to be very specific. And then you could do 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour when you get back from work. And then in terms of weekends, I'm only going to do Saturdays. And then on Saturdays, I'm going to spend 3 hours in the morning. So we already know if you're spending 2 hours per weekday and you've got 3 months, at a minimum, you're spending 60 hours reading the book potentially. And then you also have 3 Saturdays over the course of 3 months. That is 12 Saturdays. 12 times 3 means 36. So at a minimum, you're spending 36 hours studying over the course of 3 months. And then For the weekdays, you've got 20 weekdays times 3 months, you've got 60, 60 times 2, 120. So if you think about this, you're putting yourself in a good position to study during this period. If you need extra time, you can spend extra time. If you want to re-reference the body of knowledge, you can re-reference the body of knowledge. If you want to spend extra time reading through the IAPP book more than once, which is something I personally do, you've got that time, and at least you've been able to put an idea of how many hours you want to spend studying for the exam. Now, you might not need this many hours. I personally like to take tests when I know that I've put in my best work to make sure that I'm positioning myself to have covered all of the material. I don't want to go in there and not know at least some way of understanding the exam, which is again why I always put a little bit over 1 minute. You need to be able to understand the material well enough to be able to answer the questions quite quickly because you don't have that much time. And I'm pretty sure I got this wrong. 2.5 hours is 120 minutes, and then you have another 30. So you got 150 minutes between 90. So you actually have, yeah, you do a little bit over 1 minute. Yep, I was correct. So this is how I would personally set this out. If you have questions about creating a schedule, or you want general questions to help you plan the time frame in which you're going to take the exam, or you want more insight into how I personally took any of these tests, leave me a comment below. I'm planning to do more of a series like this, and we can get into like actual scheduling, how it looks like when I put it all on a spreadsheet. But I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in another one.